It started out as a psychological operational tactic developed by the U.S. military to use against terrorist organizations abroad. It appears to have ended up as a Democrat Party strategy to defeat President Trump in the 2020 election. Dr. J. Michael Waller is a defense expert and was the first to spot it. What is Defeat Disinfo?
Defeat Disinfo was an entity run in the spring and summer of 2020 by military people, former military people, supportive of Joe Biden, and it was designed to enhance a disinformation narrative about Russian collusion and all these other things that have been disproven. But they were using their military prestige to make their own disinformation seem like it was anti-disinformation.
Using their own disinformation to wrapped in a cloak of this is anti-disinformation.
Right. To confuse the public, to get people angry, to make people fearful, to energize a base that for Biden that really wasn't there because he was so bland and out of touch that there was very little enthusiasm. So it was like a psychological warfare operation aimed at the American public by former military officers who had been involved in counterinsurgency to treat the American public as an insurgency and to squash it as one would squash an insurgency.
Dr. Waller would know because he helped develop these techniques to be used against America's enemies abroad.
As a civilian, I was involved in helping prepare elements of what became the counterinsurgency manual issued by the military under Nagel. Most of my parts were removed. They related to psychological warfare and using psychological warfare to a more robust way against the enemy. Well, Nagel didn't use that in the Army manual, but he did use it in 2020 against the American public.
John Nagel is a retired Army lieutenant colonel and a leading expert on military counterinsurgency tactics. And these are guys who know how to use that.
Sure. Yeah. Former General Stanley McChrystal was on the board of one of the firm that was manufacturing this. John Nagel, former lieutenant colonel, and another former lieutenant colonel of his named Yingling, seemed to be the architects of it. Now, this was the people who designed the counterinsurgency manual against Al-Qaeda and the Taliban were the ones who came out in 2020 to weaponize these types of technologies and techniques against people who supported President Trump.
According to Waller, the retired military officers created a sophisticated computer algorithm that tracked pro-Trump messages on social media and paid influencers to counter those messages with anti-Trump propaganda. But that's not all they did. Two lieutenant colonels, Nagel and Yingling, they wrote a letter and made it public, but it was aimed at the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Milley. Right?
Yes, this letter showed some type of an internal network of former military officers and what one presumes were still active duty military officers to literally remove President Trump from office. They were anticipating an electoral confusion about the vote and about the tallying of the vote. They were predicting that perhaps President Trump would not leave office because there was no real tally of a real vote. Now, this is in July and August of 2020. This was way before the November crisis about accuracy of the counting of votes and all these other problems with the tallying. They were saying in July and August, we need to be prepared to remove Trump militarily. And the big mistake that they made was they showed their hand when they called on General Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, to intervene personally to have the President of the United States removed by force from the White House.
In the letter authored by the lieutenant colonels Nagel and Yingling, accused President Trump of, quote, assembling a private army capable of thwarting not only the will of the electorate, but also the capacities of ordinary law enforcement, unquote. Basically saying Trump is an enemy of the American people. But it wasn't just this group of retired military officers saying this. In August of 2020, Democrat Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi called not only Trump an enemy, but Republican members of the House of Representatives as well.
And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with their allies in the Congress of the United States.
What would they say now, do you think? Do you see evidence that this is that it ended after the election, or do you think there's still this ongoing operation taking place?
Well, these operations just don't stop. You have people who have either a political or a financial interest in having them continue.
It appears they haven't stopped. In January of this year, Pelosi again called her Republican colleagues the enemy.
When the enemy is within the House of Representatives.
Applying counterinsurgency tactics to politics in the U.S. may explain Democrats labeling their political opposition and Trump supporters a dangerous insurgency. Whether or not it will continue to be effective as a political strategy remains to be seen. For One America News in Washington, I'm Scott Wheeler.
They've had 11 hearings where they demonize me and lie about me and make up all this outrageous crap. I'm a Russian agent, I'm a racist, that all this other stuff. So I came here to let them know, in America, when you have hearings about somebody or someone, you're supposed to have them there. So they call me the king of fake news because I'm effective and tell the truth. They're a pack of liars. The Democrats are openly calling for the end of the First Amendment, targeting conservatives, libertarians, Christians, nationalists, free marketers, Renaissance folks. And so I'm going to start coming to these hearings where they demonize me, because I've requested to be at these hearings. I noticed they only attacked me a few times today because I was here. Usually it's constant. And then Marco Rubio threatened to physically attack me for no reason. I mean, this is a political class running scared, a bunch of chicken neck political peacocks, a corrupt establishment, and thank God Trump's exposing the censorship.
Things are changing as usual, but at the moment there's a concern that our First Amendment is in jeopardy, and people are pissed.
This country's coming back from the dead, the political class knows it, and I'm honored to be ground zero of the first big band because it woke everybody up, and the antitrust suits and everything else are coming, and these big tech companies are on notice. America's back. CNN and the Democrats, are destroying the First Amendment and needs to be stood up against.
Mr. Dorsey, when can I have my verification back?
Obama set up a CIA office to shut down independent press in the U.S.
I am a journalist.
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Obama set up a CIA office before he left to shut down independent populist media in the U.S. And Trump knows it's getting ready to sign an executive order reversing it to the Defense Authorization Act. Watch. So that's the reality of what's going on. I told you it was a bait and switch. That's how media operates. Alex Jones here on the morning of Friday, October 22nd, 2021, with a very important update for supporters of InfoWars. Several of our best-selling products are back in stock, limited supplies, and are 40 to 50% off, like DNA Force Plus. That is 40% off right now, and that sale is going to have to end on Monday. It helps your telomeres, it helps your very cells, engines, the mitochondria. It's got the PQQ, the CoQ10. It really is incredible. It's 40% off. Some of the best-selling products are 50% off as well. And we got a very limited supply, very limited run in, because I told the manufacturer, whatever ingredients you can get, whenever you have enough to make some, even if it's a smaller run, do it. So we got a very small run in of the product that's been sold out, and that is Brain Force Ultra. It's 25% off at InfoWarsStore.com, and it's going to end up selling out by Monday as well at current sales rates. So get great products to support the InfoWar at InfoWarsStore.com.